Shawnee, welcome back. So rather than doing my makeup at work, I'm doing it after work, just because I want to chat. And I'm going to use I think I'll use this Ghost Town USA palette from Nomad Cosmetics. I really like the packaging. It's just so cool. And this is a nice neutral palette from them, and it's like got some cooler tones in there. So yeah, we'll see what I come up with. Also, does anyone watch Only Murders in the Building? Please let me know if you do so that we can talk about it, because I love that show and the new season just started this week. And I need people to talk about it with. Now, I do know that Erica's daughter, Erica Conger, her daughter likes the show. So I'm like, girl, let's talk about it. So if you do like it, let me know. Anyway, I have already primed my eyelids with this Colored Rain paint base eyeshadow base in the shade Desert Sand. So I just put that on and blended it with this Sonia G brush. This is the flat definer. I'm just gonna add a little bit more. And so my friends, Erica Conger and Jan Van, we talk about a whole host of things, okay? Sometimes it's serious, a lot of times it's ridiculous and funny, and specifically, Erica and I will take a topic and just run it into the ground. Like, we will just go until, you can't go anymore. We'll be crying, laughing. Then Jan goes to bed earlier than us, but she will check in the morning, and we're just skip all of the messages because we were just nonsensing. But like I said, we do sometimes, a lot of times, talk about serious stuff, whether we're going through it, the other person is going through it, family is going through it, whatever. It's a very supportive friendship that I think we all appreciate. The topic of the idea of being too sensitive or too emotional came up last week or something, and Erica was just talking about it, kind of started the conversation, and then she recently did a video kind of discussing it, and I really enjoyed having our conversation about it, and I got really heated about it because I have often heard people call me too sensitive and too emotional, and I used to be offended by it, but now I'm actually, that's more about you than it is about me. It just kind of means that you might be a psychopath and you have no empathy, and you also can't sit with someone who is expressing emotion. So that's kind of how I respond to people now. Yeah, Erica provided some really nice comebacks for people, and I'm don't call me that. I have emotions and I express them. It's not my fault that you can't do the same, okay? So I just thought I would point that out because she was telling me some of the responses that I think a research or kind of an op-ed wrote about, and I was like, girl, that's real nice, but that's not what I would say. But also in the video, Erica mentioned, she talked about gaslighting, and she mentioned that I had done a video talking about it, and then we both realized I hadn't. It was just a rant on Marco Polo. And I don't even know how we got to the topic of gaslighting. I think it was just we were talking about narcissists that we've encountered. And so I thought, and Erica told me to talk about a couple of things that, do I still have lipstick on? Kind of. A couple of things, words that seem to have come into our social lexicon, and people are using a lot of these words, a lot of words that are typically connected to psychology-y things, and they're kind of using them in ways that are not how they have been intended or how they have been defined. Now, a lot of times with clients, I do a lot of education on things. So if someone comes in and they're like, yeah, such and such said I have depression, I'm like, what does that mean to you? Do you understand what that means and what they are saying? And do you agree? And also, sometimes clients will use language and verbiage that it doesn't quite fit, but I understand what they're saying. So if the opportunity presents itself, I do like to tell them, well, you know, this word is connected to such and such, just for like clarification purposes. So I'm going to talk about a couple of the words or phrases that I notice have become more popular in like the general public outside of the psychologist community, therapy community, blah. And you can tell me what you think, okay? I do not want to come off as some know-it-all that believes that my answers are the only right ones, because I completely don't believe that at all. I actually struggle to call myself an expert in anything, despite having like more training in working with certain populations of clients. All right, so going into the palette and then just gonna chit chat, and I don't want to use this brush. I want to use like a fluffy brush. Okay, so I'm starting to go in with this shade here, Dead Man's Hands. I've already started with this brush. This is the My Yummy Blender, the medium size from Danessa, Myricks, and My Kitco. So let's start with the term gaslighting. So I think a lot of us use that term to kind of describe an experience that we have. And I think it's helpful to know the history of the word and what it means, right? Like, you can use words however you want to, but I like to let people know what it means. So the term, it's actually based on a film called Gaslight. And I believe, like, the film was maybe 1944. It was quite some time ago. In the movie, there's a couple, a married couple, a man and a woman, and what happens is that the woman's aunt passes away and leaves her a house and like stuff in it, whatever. And so the woman meets this man, they fall in love, and they get married and all that good stuff, right? And so I love how this is just doing what it needs to do. It's punctuating my points. So they, you know, move into this house that was left to her by her aunt, and just like strange things start to happen. So like the woman, I don't remember her name, Alice, y'all know me and names. So she starts noticing that the lights are dimmer. And she asks her husband, like, do you notice like the lights being dimmer than usual? Like, you kind of know the brightness of your light bulbs and such, right? Like, I tend to keep like most of the house in very like soft mood lighting. But she was like, is something going on? Like, I feel like the lights are dimming. And he's like, nah, girl, I know what you're talking about. Like, later on in the film, you find out that he's like searching in the attic for stuff. Like, he's trying to just make it big. He don't really love this lady. And so when he turns on the lights in the attic, the lights in like the rest of the house dim, and they are gas lights, right? So the gas lights dim. He also is like hiding stuff from her in terms of he'll be looking for something or whatever, and he finds it in her purse, and he's like, you stole this, you're like kleptomaniac. And she's like, I don't remember doing any of this. So he's trying to convince her that she's insane, okay? Just all these things, and she's like so confused. She's not believing what she's seeing. She's not believing her own experiences, and that is where the term gaslight came from. And then psychology people kind of turned it into a verb, gaslighting. So the idea is that it's an experience of someone basically trying to convince you that you are insane or trying to convince you that you are not, like, your experience isn't true or valid, or like trying to make you think of things in a different way that like aren't true. Let me give you an example. There was a narcissist. That's another word that has a whole history. Anyway, this person is for real, a narcissist. And I remembered an event. I remembered it so perfectly clear. I remember what I was wearing. I remember where I was. I remember how my hair was. I remember what room I was in. I remember the phone I had. I remember everything, okay? For this event specifically, and typically for like special experiences or like just out of the ordinary things, I'll remember to a T like what was going on. But this person insists on their own version of the truth. And by all means, believe what it is that you believe, but I know for sure that they are wrong. And I told my mama, I wrote it in my journal, I have evidence that the thing happened the way I remembered it. But they kept insisting like, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened. And I'm like, no, it's not. I don't think it happened like that. No, that's how it happened. This is what you did. I'm like, I didn't do anything. Like, you did it. So it's like I started to think I was crazy. And I know the level of crazy I possess. So also, I know when someone is trying to convince me that I'm crazier than I already am. Okay? And it was just, I was like questioning myself. I called my mom and I was like, do you remember this thing happening? And she confirmed it. I looked in my journal, like everything. But yet and still this person was like, no, it happened this way. This is what you did. And I'm like, I swear to God, that's not what I did. I don't be swearing to God. I swear to God, that's not what happened. But they were making me feel like I was crazy. Like I was legit losing my mind and thinking that I was remembering things incorrectly. Although there was a part of me that was like, you're not remembering it incorrectly. This is what happened. Because I always like to double check. Because, you know, over the years, I've learned how to apologize. And not everyone knows how to apologize. Like, not everyone, I never really want to. But I've learned how to apologize, how to acknowledge someone else's feelings, and how to, you know, take ownership of whatever it is that I did or however it is that I made them feel. Anyway, so that's like an example of gaslighting. I just noticed that people are using it a lot more freely, and I don't know that it always applies. I mean, I think it's important to have language to express your experience, but I do also recognize, like my colleagues and I have recognized, there are just some words and diagnoses that people just love right now, which is so interesting because like years ago, like in the 70s and stuff, 1970s, people didn't want diagnoses, and now it kind of feels like everyone kind of wants one. Yeah. So that's one of the words, gaslighting. Another word, there were like 3. Shoot. Gaslighting. Trauma bond. That's another one that even I initially was using incorrectly. So the FYI, I'm not perfect. Near it, but not. So I hear a lot of people talking about having a trauma bond. Like a lot of like really good friends were like, we trauma bonded. And I think it's fine to use the word like that. Like you connect with someone over the trauma that you've experienced, even if it's something different from their own. But a trauma bond is actually not that. It's not connecting over some like shared trauma, or even like you had trauma, I had trauma, and now we're friends. Let's go with this shade here. This is different. That is Smoky Quartz. And I'm going to use this Sonia G builder brush. So a trauma bond is actually like a person bonding with the person that caused the trauma. So it's like if there is some sort of, like if it's a parent who unfortunately does something that traumatizes the child. A trauma bond is that child continuing to feel really connected and really connected to that person, to the person who caused the trauma. That's a trauma bond. It's not like we both have trauma, so we're besties. That is just kind of like you guys are relating and connecting on things, and maybe you can understand each other in a different way because you have bonded over trauma. But a trauma bond, I think it is often just used not the way it was intended. Now, it might sound similar to Stockholm Syndrome if you know that, right? But Stockholm Syndrome is more about like, usually it has something to do with like some sort of danger, I guess you would say. I'm not as versed on that one. But like, if someone is kidnapped and they have like empathy and stuff for, or some sort of like, almost like positive feelings towards the person who kidnapped them. So it's different from a trauma bond because it's not necessarily like feeling like, how do you explain it? Like having any sort of warm and fuzzy feelings towards someone who has caused you some sort of danger, right? And the best example I can give is someone feeling empathy and warm feelings towards their kidnapper. And that can happen as a means of like protecting oneself, you know, like, yeah, the things that our brains and bodies do in response to trauma, they're like, this is going to sound weird, but I'm like, they're amazing. And probably I say that because that's the field that I have that extra like expertise in. I work with primarily trauma. Well, I work with a lot of folks with trauma, more specifically sexual assault trauma. So I love trauma. And, you know, a lot of people don't like that work because it can be super exhausting in terms of mentally, emotionally, even physically. I tend to feel things in my body. And so sometimes, like, I'll finish a day and I'm like, oh my God, my back is killing me. And it's not just because of my boobs. Or like, oh, I just, like, I feel pain or just, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes that can happen for me. Not always, like, but sometimes, like, some of the things I hear make me hate humanity, in all seriousness. Like, yeah. I'm like, people are trash, boo-boo. People suck. So yeah. Definitely being within that sort of subfield of psychology, it can take its toll. And I am not the best person in terms of self-care. Like, I tell my supervisees, do as I say and not as I do, okay? Like, even some of my clients, like, Dr. B, are you gonna, like, take a break? Like, no, I have to be there for you every day, all the time. So I continue to work on taking breaks. Erica and Jan get on me all the time. Jan even uses my full government name, both she and Erica, and tell me to do things, and I'm quite contrary, so oftentimes I do the exact opposite of what they say, but I'm trying to get better, okay? Now, I just want some sort of shade to kind of blend this out a little bit, so I want to stick to something neutral and like brownish, so I think I'll use this one first, and then if that doesn't give me what I want, I'll use this one, sorry. So that is like the, what is it, child? You know what that's called? That's called getting old and you can't see as well as you used to. What the hell? Oh, Undead Sheriff and Bandit Queen. It's like the, I'ma say is the glare, okay? Leave me alone. So another word, probably the last one if I can get my act together and finish my eye makeup, is trigger. I feel like, because, you know, I think people have gotten a lot better with giving like trigger warnings or content warnings and like some history. Now, a lot of us experience trauma, but not everyone is diagnosed with PTSD. There's, because PTSD has like, there's A, B, C, D, E. Yeah, I think you have to meet like A, B, C, D, E criteria, okay? One or more of these things need to be happening for you to be given the diagnosis of PTSD. And it wasn't until like the 70s or 80s that people realized that PTSD can affect people who aren't veterans. Like, it can be from some sort of personal trauma that you've experienced. It can also be from a mass trauma, like floods or tornadoes, hurricanes, stuff like that. So people started to realize, oh, it's not just folks who have been in like combat. It's also people who have had these experiences, right? And trauma literally changes your brain. And there's a lot of like evidence to show that we store trauma in our bodies. Especially for like, well, I won't go into all of that. Anyway, you kind of store trauma in your body. And that's a bit ashier than I would like. Girl, and it's starting to get hot in here. So I'm going to go in with this shade as well. This is the same My Yummy blender. Is that what I used? Yes. That I just kind of brushed off on a paper towel. I don't know. That might give me the look that I want. Anyway, I find that people are using trigger a bit more loosely, just kind of like throwing it in there. And I kind of work with clients to understand what their triggers might be and understand how triggers work. So a lot of times we can't predict what is going to trigger us. Some things you're like, okay, this thing happened, and so I know if I encounter this specific thing, I'm going to be triggered. Okay? But that could be like visually seeing something. It could be like touch. It could be a scent. It could be being in a certain place. Like, it could be so many things, and you can't always predict which ones are going to happen. So the way I often describe it is like, think of your body, think of your, think of you, your human self, as a body of water. And like, this is all your life experiences. Now the trauma is like a stone that you, like a rock that you skip across the body of water, the lake, whatever. And so it's going to cause ripples, right? Now the trauma, that stone is going to sink to the bottom, right? The bed of the lake. I don't know what it's called. And it's going to sink down. So maybe those ripples kind of like smooth out a little bit. But something or another is going to come and kind of kick that stone, that trauma back up. It could be a fish. It could be something, right? And that could be whatever the event, scent, touch, whatever it is that you experience. And so that rock, that stone is going to go up and cause ripples again, right? Okay. That's the best way that I like explain it. One of the ways. I use a lot of metaphors and like, I be coming up with stuff. I've definitely used TV shows to explain things. I'm like, that's like on Gilmore Girls when blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so the thing with a trigger, again, we don't always know what it's going to be, but the thing with a trigger, this is really not giving me the color I want, but that's okay. The thing with a trigger is that when it happens, a lot of times your body and brain respond as if the traumatic event were happening in the moment. So let's say you had some sort of traumatic experience when you were 15. And now you're like 30, 35, 40. If you have a trigger, it's going to be like your body and brain are going to respond as if you were 15 and experiencing that trauma again. So it's sometimes like I will see someone becomes very childlike in the session, or just they are having a hard time expressing themselves or whatever it is, and it's literally like they have just flown back in time and the trauma is happening right now because of the trigger that they experience. So let's say like you had a bad experience with the color red, and then you come across something red, it can trigger you, right? There's no guarantee that it's going to, but there's a possibility that it does, and you just like fly back to when you had that experience when you were 15. So a lot of the times it's about remembering that you're not experiencing that right now. You are safe. Thank God for your nervous system. It's acting, right? It's working. It's just responding to a danger that is no longer present. I really feel like I just lectured, and I apologize. I know. Oh, I hate this because I don't want to come off as someone who's like, well, let me tell you how this is. Because also I feel like from the theoretical orientation and perspective that I take, it's really about providing like unconditional positive regard, like really honoring where the person is, being collaborative with them, providing them with language, being accepting, being a safe space, like all of these things. So if somebody needs to explain something in the way they need to explain it, that's fine. I just want to know from you, how are you defining this? And if that's how you're going to define it, okay, that's what we're going to use until you are at a place, maybe you never will be, where I can be like, actually, this is how it is. Okay. So here's the finished look. I really don't know what I'm doing and what I did here. Like I literally was just putting colors on my eyes, y'all. The purpose was just to chat, I guess. But I'm really hoping that the information was helpful and that I did not make you feel like I was just like throwing so much information at you and or like talking down to you in any way, because that definitely I will apologize for if you let me know, because it's more about, it's like intent versus impact. So if I've had some sort of impact on you and you would like to talk about it, please let me know. Now, I will say I am not a YouTube psychologist, okay? I feel like that's a totally different thing. I'm a licensed psychologist in real life, right? But I do not claim to be a YouTube psychologist. I feel like that's a totally different thing, different skill set. So I will not be diagnosing anyone. But if you do need some help finding a therapist, you can definitely contact me via Instagram. That is something I'm more than willing to help you with. I have a lot of resources because I've just been in the game for a little while now. Like my training started 19, 20 years ago, okay? And I've been a licensed psychologist for over a decade, coming up on a decade and a half. So I know a little bit of stuff, y'all. I know a little bit of stuff. Anyway, yeah. Again, hopefully some of this was helpful. I also hope that you are continuing to take care of yourself. I have a new bedtime. This is the second night trying it, but the first night went pretty well, I think. So I would love it if you like the video, and I would love it even more if you subscribe to the channel. Let me know if there are any topics that you are interested in, and if I have the knowledge, I will share it with you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.